says it's live. But...
Hi guys, on the hour I'm going to be continuing making the dragon for my dragon lady. I'll see you then. Alright, bye. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. Today we're going to be carrying on our work in progress of the dragon rider. We're going to be carrying on making a dragon. Very quickly I'll show you some items in my shop. Now these are all £20 each. We've got 2 of the bigger boxes. I started out, that's the earliest one of the 2 cats cuddling with their eyes closed, and it's a trinket box. It's got a very basic heart in it, so it's a very early box. Then that was, whoops, knocking boxes over. That was the progression. I decided to bring the tails round into that nice heart shape and attempted open eyes. And hi everyone, hi Fairy Hedgehog. And the inside I've gone a bit more decorative with the inlay that keeps the box lid from sliding.
Arty Life says hi.
Hi Arty Hearty Life.
Little says good morning.
Oh hi Bitzel. And the third one, I went a bit smaller. The sides I have done a Celtic stamp on them. I've put feet on this one, and I've actually marbled in the cats. So you can see the progression of style, but they are all £20. I've had a fiddle around in my shop and I'm trying to get some of my early work sold on the cheaper side. Thank you. I do show in one of my previous videos how to get that sort of stamp, but you can basically smear your clay into a rubber stamp, use your tissue blade to take off the excess, and then when you stamp it onto raw clay, it doesn't work so well with baked clay. The moisture in the raw clay will pull the clay that's in the indent of the stamp out and you get quite a nice effect. But yep, so I thought I would do 3 this week and show you a progression in my style. And by the way, this sort of cat is a very easy first project, because you're literally making 2 large semicircles and you tuck the paws in before you push them together. Same with those back legs. And then all you've got to do is get on the bottom of that, bring it out into a towel and start to wrap it round into the heart shape. So it's very effective for quite an easy technique. Right, I'm going to put these on the floor and I'll be right with you. Okay, if you look on my YouTube, you'll see previous videos where we made this woman. Thank you. And as I've shown her before, I'm very pleased with how she's turned out. Let's get her necklace centered. I actually found a tiny bit of opal. I'm so pleased with it because it matches the gold top, because it's a slightly gold coloured opal. I've been working on the dragon. Now, previous weeks, let me get this all out because it's all layered up. Last week we made the basic body that we're now going to pretty up. So I've made it out of my scrap clays mixed together, and body, I would just break a foot off. I can show you what to do if you break a foot off. So I'll do that first. That's what happens when you try and pick things up in a hurry. So this is where we got to last week, and the wings. There we go. Now, first off, I'm going to rejoin that foot back on. So I'm pushing it on, making sure I'm not trapping any air bubbles. None of this lot isn't baked. She is baked. She's the only baked and done bit. I'm leaving all of this raw because it actually makes it easier for the scales to stick properly. I'm just pushing the clay and smoothing out that joint so that it's attached properly. You see what I mean? And it comes back together nicely. So 4 legs, body, wings and head. Now it's going to need a whole heap of scales. So what I've done, I'm just going to move these out of the way so that I can show you what I've done. I have made up a whole heap of scale canes, and I'm going to quickly show you how I made them. So I'll hold that up to the camera so you can see. It's a fade from light red to dark red, and that dark red's got a little bit of gold in it to give it some sparkle, and I mixed in some glitter which will show up more when it's sliced. So first step is to show you how I made that. So I'm going to make a really small one, but all you have to do is scale it up for lots and lots of cane. You start out with your 2 colours and you're going to make a Skinner blend.
This all says, this was just saying good morning to us.
Right, so let me get my rolling pin. It's easier to do with a pasta machine, but you don't have to. So I'm going to show you it with a rolling pin. Right, you're starting out with a rectangle, roughly. And then one side of that rectangle you're going to push on to make it a diagonal. Now, one point you want to pinch into a sharp point, like that. And the other, I leave it flat. Now, all the flat area is going to remain a solid colour. All the diagonal is going to fade from your dark through to your light, if that makes sense. So I'll show you when I line up the dark red with it. And I've on purpose taken 2 little dark reds so I can show you, if that happens, how to fix it up easy. Right, so I don't need to form a proper rectangle because I'm going to diagonal that side. So long as these 2 are roughly flat, then I'm pushing this one into a diagonal, pinching one end, so the same as the last, making one side flat. So you're going to line up your diagonals so that the flat end of one colour is at the top and the flat end of the other colour is at the bottom. And you go, oh expletive, one is smaller than the other. All you need to do then is you can either make a strip to go in there of dark red, but normally what I just do is that, and you've got it fine, so long as you've got that diagonal. Right, so let me get my tissue blade out of the way. Now you are going to be rolling along that line, and you need to remember that, because if you fold it the wrong way even once, you're going to mess it up. Don't fold like that. Basically what you're trying to do, get a bit of length on it, you're going to fold in half, making sure you're leaving a bit of each colour on either side, like that. Push it down, roll it out, and you're going to do this a few times. And if you're working on a big amount, you can fold it over twice. Yeah, sticking to the board, there we are. Right, so get that a little bit thinner, make sure the lines are pretty straight, fold it back over. Now can you see it's starting to spread out that way? If you're not happy with how wide it's getting, especially with your pasta machine, you can end up with clay that's wider than the machine. Fold it over so it's quite thick, which is easier to actually change the shape of. And I'm pushing in, and can you see we're just starting to get a wiggle on that line. Once that happens, you want to push on the wiggles and pull them outwards so that you don't accidentally end up with a concertina fold in your clay. So sometimes I push on the desk whilst I'm pinching outwards. It just keeps you in control of your clay. And see, now that's narrower. So we can bring it back out again. Now midway through it's going to look really scruffy, and when I did this the first time, when I saw that scruffy, I thought I'd messed it up, because every video I saw doing a Skinner blend had them do it off camera. So this is what you do for a double fold, like that. It just takes it quicker. There are those that say you can't control the colours that well by doing that, but I find it's fine.
Is the line supposed to be diagonal?
It starts out diagonal, but it goes straight as you fold over, and what that is it's the diagonal is giving a increase and decrease in colour ratios. So as the line folds over, the colours start to mix and it starts going to straight lines, but in different shades. And that's the whole thing. Before this way of doing it was invented, they used to measure out portions of clay and mix them and then form lines of the different colours that they pre-mixed, which was a lot of maths and a whole lot of measuring, and none of us like to measure. If we can get away with it, I'm pretty sure most clayers wouldn't measure a thing. This way you can just
the gradient by folding over, not aligning the line.
You can increase the gradient a bit. I find if you're not happy with one of the colours and you want a bit more, you can add a little pinch in whilst you're mixing, rather than trying to re-diagonal it. The other thing you can do is, I've also found if you put a pinch of white in on the join line, it just shows up the colour change slightly more, but you really got to be sparing with it, because it will be vastly apparent if you put too much in.
Do you ever use less of the darker colour because it takes over so much?
You can use less. It depends on what you're aiming for from your teardrop, where you want that fade to start. And since the ones I've made are halfway, can you see how scruffy that looks? When I first saw that, I was like, right, it's absolutely bleeped. I've ruined it. I've done it wrong. And you haven't. Persevere. Just clean that off, because you don't want to mix too much of the wrong colouring, because it's sat weird.
It's kind of magical when it suddenly changes.
It is kind of magical. There are those people in the groups that say you need to do 30 folds and rollouts. In my entire life of Skinner blending, and that's been quite vast, I have never got to 30 yet. I get to about maybe 10 or 15.
But you do doubles though, so
And
that.
if I'm doing doubles, far less.
Oh, really?
Can you see just that extra 2 pass through? Look at the fade line on that. The back's still scruffy. We'll still sort that out.
And
So it's
currently
going to need a few more.
it's kind of stepped, isn't it? You've got
Yeah, it's still streaky. So couple more, but you can see just it suddenly goes from rough enough to make you think you want to chuck it to OMG, this is now looking like a professional did it. Why is it in front of me? See? We're basically there. That's good enough for me. Now, where it's thin, it's harder to work with. So the first thing I do is I layer it up like I was going to roll it out, but I want the height because it's easier to start to push. Because what we need to do, let's get some, yeah, cut a bit off one of my canes so it's easier to show. We need to change the height of the different colours and make it so that this is about that thick, that's about that thick, and it's all small. And again, the first time I saw this, it looks like wizardry, and it's purely because of the elasticity of polymer clay that you can do this. So we're going to be doing what we've done when the clay went mad in going too wide. We're starting to push the clay in at the sides, and when it starts to look like it's folding, you're going to pinch and pull it out that way. So it will start to go like this, and sometimes turn it over because you'll find that having your pressure all on one side will make it slant in diagonal. Can you see it's already starting to go longer, but keep that fade and keep it in the middle. It's pretty magic, and you can do this for actual big pictures. If you look on previous videos, I've done both picture canes with butterflies in and kaleidoscope canes. So pushing and pulling, and it's still keeping that fade, which is amazing of it. But my pro tip for you, you're starting from the middle and working out, especially if you're doing picture canes. The more close to the edge you get, the more distorted the actual image is. To the tips. And it doesn't matter so much in dragon scales, because I'm very fortunate. I used to own a milk snake, and I spent a long time looking at her scales because she was beautiful. But they're all individual, and quite a lot of them were not perfect in their colour symmetries and neat lines and things like that. The fade can be quite scruffy in them. So we're now down to pretty much the right height. I'm going to turn that rectangle into a round, into a stick, just by rolling on it and convincing it that it wants to be in this shape instead, like so. And if you take it down too thin, I do it on a bit here. So I took that right down and go, oops, that's too small. You can push, you hold on the bottom and you push, and it will go back to being thick. You just got to watch out for that zigzag. See? So it's, everything is generally repairable. So now we're on the stick. I've gone across the red, the lighter red, and pinched at the bottom to turn it into that teardrop shape. So you're lining up your dark red so that it's halfway across the top, and you're going to push on the light red side to get that point. And that's the easiest way to do it without giving yourself repetitive strain injury, by doing that pinching motion all the way up lots of sticks. And this is a very good side point, and it doesn't just go for us clayers. Think about the strains that you're putting on your hands, and is there a way you can tweak the technique so that instead of doing something very repetitive that's straining, you can do something a little less so and save your hands. because they're your most valuable tools, and if you mess them up, you're then going to be in trouble for the rest of your time. And that includes your back, your posture. As we work, we want to hunch over and really look at what we're doing. Think about bringing your desk height up or your chair height down, because you hunch over for a couple of years, you're going to end up like one of those old crones from the books, all bent over. You won't get back upright. So do consider this. And some of the things I do when I roll out balls, and I'll show you it on scrap. Actually, let's just do it on this. Instead of doing one at a time, I roll out two at a time, so one with each hand, so that's saving the arm strain. And you can do the same for sticks, which are the two most used things in polymer clay. Instead of twisting a colour like that, which is very hard on your arms and wrists, hold one end and just roll it, and that twist comes in just as good, but you're not jarring your wrist. So you know what you use the most. Have a look at it, have a think about it, and see, can you tweak it so you're achieving the same thing but not half killing yourself. Right, quick drink. And as you can see, these are all now very pretty fade sliced scales.
They're not scales yet.
They're not scales yet, but they're the cane for it. Right, so what I'm going to do is I want the stomach to be glitter, and I've got some nice deep burnt orange glitter. So I'm going to put that on before I put on the scales, because then I stand a little better chance of not getting the glitter onto the scales where I don't want it. I do advise though that you have some rubbing alcohol, because that will clean it off if you get it in the wrong place. But I'm having a bit of a thing of loving my holographic glitters at the moment, so you'll see me use them quite a bit. Another tip that it's worth thinking about when you're using glitters and you're using mica powders. Firstly, with mica powders, you should always have a dust mask on, because you don't really want to breathe it. Let me have a look for a brush that's the right size. That'll do. That's not such a big deal with glitter. I would say try and make sure you don't wash glitter down the sink. You want to actually throw it in a bin.
Is there any chance you can...
Sorry, there we go.
Just slightly, thank you.
I'm just dabbing it on. You can use a brush. I do often use a brush, but my brush ain't picking it up properly, so I'm going to use my finger. If you're trying to empty glitter back into a bag, get a bit of paper, fold a crease through the middle, tip your glitter onto it, and the crease in the middle will be a funnel. Yeah, the other thing,
Fairy Hedgehog says, how does the glitter stick?
where the clay's raw, it's sticky. And this is the other bit I'm going to get to on this. With paint, you can layer it up. Once it's dried, you can stick another layer on it. It gets darker and more lustrous. With polymer clay, unless you mix it into a varnish or something like that, glitters and mica powders, they can only be one layer thick. It won't stick to itself, because they don't. And once the raw clay is covered, it's covered. So I have watched videos where someone spent a good half an hour trying to put a second layer of glitter on just to make it a stronger colour. And I think she deluded herself into the fact that she believed it worked. And she might have patched up a few gaps, but generally she hasn't doubled up the layer.
Somebody called JB905 says cool.
Yeah. And it feels, thank you JB9. JYB9. It's it feels intuitive to want to put more layers on things. We do it with our makeup, our nail varnish, our painting, our drawing. So many art worlds, layering up is a good thing. And even with clay it can be, but putting glitter onto raw clay or mica powder, you're literally wasting your time. So I'm going where I want the tummy, up the middle, and then I'm going to start to build the scales around it.
You can't stick glitter to baked clay.
You can't stick glitter to baked clay, but what you can do is mix it in with your varnish and then paint it on.
Does that give it a depth because it's a different height?
It can do. I find what I find with it is it's a bit more of a hassle, because what you normally do is you put your glitter on first and then you put a coat of varnish over the top. Especially with polymer clay, you need to varnish over the top of any surface application you put on. So glitter, mica powder, inks, what else? That's basically most of it really. If you don't, it'll rub off. But if you put the glitter in with the varnish, you don't get a smooth top coat, because the
glitter makes it lumpy.
Glitter makes it lumpy. Right.
Can you varnish over?
You can put. So that was going to be my next bit of advice. If you're putting glitter in varnish, do another coat of just plain varnish afterwards, and then it goes smooth. Now, not all varnishes in the polymer clay world are equal.
Do you have to varnish over paint?
You have to varnish over paint. You have to chalks and pastels is another one you can use. Anything you use as a surface adding, you need to put a coat of varnish on, because where it's plastic isn't that porous. I mean, if you look at polymer clay under a very good microscope, there are some tiny pittings, which is why they advise you not to eat food off of it. But other than that, it's waterproof. So you really need to put a coat of sealant if you're going to put a surface. I use Duraclear Art Deco, or I use Ronseal Quick Drying Gloss Varnish. The Ronseal has a much better shine to it, but it's slightly brown tinged, so you need a dark or bright colour. If you try and put it over pastel or white, it will go slightly brownish, because it's designed for wood.
This one's just from
Art Deco dries very quickly, but it's not as shiny. Let's see. This is one that I varnished with Ronseal floor varnish. This is one that I varnished with the Art Deco. So can you see there is still a shine on it? It still brings the colours out, but that Ronseal is good stuff. But it takes a lot more time to dry. But if you're getting your own varnish and you don't want to go with those two recommendations, what you're looking for is the word polyurethane. There are a lot of types of varnishes that if you try to use them with polymer clay, even polymer clay that's been baked very well, it reacts with the plastic in it and you end up with it never drying, or worse, it dries completely and you think you're fine. Then when you come back to it in literally a couple of months, it feels like you spread Pritt stick over the whole thing. It starts to sort of react to melt. So yeah, you don't.
I don't think everyone knows what Pritt stick is.
It's a glue. Pritt stick's a glue. There's a website called the Blue Bottle Tree. If you really get into polymer clay, do have a look at it. They do lots of reviews, and one of the ones she's done is varnish. Now, cutting your cane slices evenly, there are lots of techniques. You can put a ruler alongside. You can spend a lot of money on a cane slicing machine.
Do you want
The other thing that I can do and tend to do, if I'm being really precise, this is called a mitre block. They're about £1.50. They come mini and huge. And what you can do is you put a little metal ruler down the centre and you put your cane on it, you drag the ruler along and you put your blade into the slot, and you can then do very centered, whoops, ruler. There we go. Too big. I did have one, it's just I got one for it, it's just fallen out somewhere. But these don't need to be that accurate. So what I would say is just make sure your cane is straight, not diagonal, and you want to get over the top of it. So I know that puts me in the way of the camera, so I'll be quick about it. But getting over the top allows you to eyeball your slices far better. So, and I get quite quick.
They don't need to be perfectly even.
And with dragons, they definitely don't need to be perfectly even. So I do advise, if you want to get used to doing cane slices, make scales for a dragon, because if you get some that are bigger than the others or thicker than the others, when you push them flat, they'll just make a scale that's slightly bigger. And reptiles do have that. Their scales are not absolutely perfectly uniform. So as you can see, I've just literally gone along production line, cut lots of slices off of this. Whoop, and now I'm going off the bottom of the screen. There we go. Right, done. Blade out the way. Make sure you put your blade, the sharp side, facing away from you.
Very hedgehog, you must have missed your last thing, because you asked, do you have a measure, or do you do it by eye?
Oh, I do it by eye. If I'm trying to make something called a pattern sheet or a pattern veneer, where you're basically making a very flat sheet of the pattern to put over something, then I use my mitre block, because you want them all to fit in together and be level. If you start to roll one out that's vastly unlevelled, then you'll start to get a distortion in the image. But even with that, I push it all together, and instead of rolling it out flat, I get my rounded tissue blade and start taking off any bits that are sticking up. See, I go that far to avoid measuring. Just me. So I'm going spit out my words. I'm going through and pinching each of these so that they're flat, so they look more scale like. And again, we can be quite quick because you can do 2 at a time, like so. Now you've got to pick a direction that you want your scales.
How are you pinching them? Which dimension?
See that? So like that.
Pinching a point.
Pinching them flat, so they look like a flat teardrop, like a scale. See? So going through them all and just pinching so that they make flat scales. Right, we're going to need to pick a direction that our scales are going to run in, and we need to make sure that we stick to it. Now, I like to put the pointy end facing towards the head and the roundy end towards the bottom of the towel, if that makes sense.
Is that what you did on the other dragon?
That's what I did. So let's go on this dragon. Whoop, I get this one. can you see? Pointy tip that's in black, like that bit there. You've got the roundy bit, then the roundy bit. They're all facing the same direction. If you don't uniform the directions of the scales, it looks really odd. And I'll show you, you'll see what I mean as I lay these ones in. So, but you can run your scales head to foot or foot to head. If you hear kind of moaning in the background, it's because my husband's got a pet cat on his lap who is in the cone of shame for attacking his chin, and he's not happy about it, so he's grizzling periodically.
That's when it runs.
It's basically whenever Jamie moves, because our cats are not spoilt, are they? But he doesn't try to get up on my countertop because he knows better that I do not allow him up here, because cat hair and clay does not mix well.
Unfortunately, I think it mixes too well.
Yeah, unfortunately it does mix too well, that's the problem.
It sticks like mica powder.
When I very first started, I had tried to make it so the cat never came in the room I clayed, but life is life and you can't keep your pets out. Right, so that's how quick it is to pinch them all flat. Now, we're going to start down at the tip of the towel. I'm getting glitter on my hands already.
Have you ever had that happen with cat hair? Asks Fairy Hedgehog.
What, cat hair in my clay?
Can you move forward a bit?
All the time. I'm just tapping off the excess glitter, not onto my things. I'm going to sweep that in the bin because I don't want glitter all over my scales. Whoop.
Glitter that's been on clay can't.
It can go back in the bag, but there's about a quarter of a pinch there, and it's going to take me forever to put it back in a pack, and none of you want to actually watch that. So I'm going to put it so that I can see the tip of the towel. Let's move all this out of the way because we're going to work that way up. So starting at the bottom edge, just slightly overlapping the tip of the towel, because I'm going to put a towel spike on. Am I on camera? I am, yep. I'm just going around
you can see.
like this. And I'm building up towards the spine. So, first line of scales are in place. Now, there you go. First line of scales for you. You can see I've just slightly left a slight overhang over the tip. Right.
Oh, the tip's off the bottom.
Yep, I know. I was just wiping my hands. Next line, you want to go in between the scales that you've put on. So, like that. But you don't have to be too picky about it and take too much time. It does look okay even when it's not as neat and there's an uneven gapping around them. So the towel always gets done really quick, and I do like scaling up a dragon because it can be very meditative. You can put on a YouTube or a podcast or some music and just sit there, and before you know where you are, you have done all the body. Now, if you've noticed, I've not attached the legs, and that is on purpose. Trying to get the scales into the joints between the tops of the legs and the body is really difficult. So it's far easier to scale all the way up the body, scale all the legs up, and then just stick them on. the other thing about that is you can position your legs however you want, and you're not going to get through to the underside clay. And that's why I use scrap clay for the underside when I make a scaled up dragon, because I do make dragons that aren't covered in scales, but when you do, you're not going to get to see the clay underneath, so you might as well not use your best clay for it. Now, there is a million things you can do with scrap clay that isn't just mix it all together and use it for the inside of sculptures. If you're looking for something and you're a jewellery maker, there's something called a Natasha bead. There's YouTubes about that all over the place. If you noticed, my YouTube does not really include jewellery because I'm not what you call a girly girl. I don't really wear jewellery. I mean, I haven't worn my wedding ring since the day I got it. I don't like it very much. I find it uncomfortable, and where I get a lot of body pain, having constrictive jewellery on just makes it even worse. So, and the other thing about jewellery is I find it such small space to work in. When you sculpt, you've got so much area that you can do work on. The most you got on jewellery is a pendant or one of those big statement collar type necklaces, and yeah, it's not enough for me. Right, here's a little kludge for you. Can you see that the space I've got left at the bottom of that towel is smaller than the scales that I've got? You can either overlap your scales or just slightly curve it under like that. I'm going to probably have to do a bit more glitter on that once I've scaled it all up, I think. But reptiles really have done us a favour in the fact that their scales are not perfectly even and symmetrical or very complicated, but you can go complicated. If I had a different coloured scale, you can patch in and make diamonds on the backs. If you look in my Etsy shop, there is a massive dragon I did on a vase where it's pink scales with blue diamonds or purple diamonds or something like that. So you can really go a lot of creative and not have to just go one uniform colour. I am sticking with one colour today because I've got a lot going on in this statue. I don't want it just to get too busy. Right, that's that little lot used up. So quick show you where I'm at, and we've got the glitter, and you see my glitter's off to not thick enough, so I'm going to bring the glitter back round a bit, and that's all good. Luckily your raw clay will stick to glitter fine, so if you put it in slightly the wrong place, the only thing that's happened is you wasted a pinch of glitter. Now this will take a little bit to scale it all up, and I will keep at it for about an hour. I'm going to bring the body up halfway, and then I'll show you what I'm doing with the legs, just so you can see something a bit different, because the legs have their own problems to them, because you've got the curve of the thigh, bringing it round that. So let's just cut some slices, and I'll do a little bit more up the tail so that I'll be able to attach some back legs to it without causing myself problems in the future. Whoop. I can already. It's alright, he can yell. You don't need to throw him out. Whoop. Yeah. Kitties are vocal. I'm sure no one minds too much. Whilst I'm doing this, I can tell you, I've got my birthday tomorrow, and it's a very bath-themed birthday so far, because I've asked for bath sheets off of a few people, and bath melts, because I used to really love bath bombs, but where I keep a massive tub of Epsom salts, because if you've got muscle pain, 2 scoops of Epsom salts in the bath, so 2 cups worth in a bath, half-hour soak. It's amazing. It draws the lactic acid out of your muscles and helps with the pain. Well, bath bombs are basically Epsom salts and bicarbonate soda with a bit of nice smell to it. So I might as well not bother with that. But bath melts are all the cocoa butter and oils and stuff like that. So they are always good for me. So I've asked for that for a couple of people. And I have booked myself and my hubby were off to a restaurant called the Grumpy Mole, which is adorable. So I'm looking forward to that.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Myself and my twin sister. I'm going to go see her in a few weeks' time. My nephew is unbelievably big now. It's crazy how quickly kids grow.
Auntie Hottie Life says, birthday, happy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I've always wanted a summer birthday. It must be nice to be able to do outdoor things. January the 30th, you never ever get good weather. I've never had a good weather birthday yet. But it could be worse. My nephew, his birthday is New Year's Eve. And there ain't no one who's not busy doing stuff. And all the kids are off of school, so it's hard to organise a party. So he has to do the whole same thing as the monarchy, and he does a birthday in the summertime that is his birthday party, and they just quietly sort of say happy birthday on New Year's.
Auntie Hottie Life says, not sure how my words got jumbled. I'm Capricorn too.
I'm not Capricorn, I'm Aquarius. Very, very end of Aquarius. Is Capricorn the next one? I never really got into star signs. Sorry, just a little. There we go. It's a good job I've got Jamie telling me I'm off camera.
Well, you're focusing what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm focused on what I'm doing. But it is so effective, and it really does come along pretty quickly, these scales, once you've made the clay up. And if you've got a bunch of small kids and you need to keep them busy, make up a load of scales and get them to cover something in it.
Little. I said Little said I'm Capricorn too.
Oh, right, yes, you did say that.
It wasn't Auntie Hottie, was it?
Oh, it was Glitzel that said I'm a Capricorn, sorry. Yeah, no, January the 30th is the very end of Aquarius, but I really haven't followed the star signs thing since I found out there used to be, was it 13? And they literally just chucked one away and shoved all the rest of them over a little. I'm like, well, if the whole thing is meant to be about a numerical accuracy, doesn't doing that just ruin it all?
Auntie Hottie Life says Capricorn is December to January. Aquarius is January to February.
There we go. But yeah, I know I'm that, and I know that my birthstone, I think it's amethyst.
Wasn't
Only
that
because
also made up by jewellers?
Yeah, that was made up by jewellers. And the reason why I know that is because I've had it bought for me several times, and it's one that I'm not actually that keen on. Opal would have to be my favourite stone because it's just stunningly beautiful.
Little says, oh yeah, my mum's was December 30th.
December 30th.
Don't know which one that
She must have found it hard to get kids to come to her birthday party as well.
because
It's holiday time.
5 5 days after Christmas.
Yeah, and 5 days after Christmas. The other thing you get is the whole joint Christmas and birthday present as one. And it's really rare for someone to actually spend the money for that they would have spent on 2 presents. They just spend half the money and call it both. You're like, no! When you're a kid, these things are so important. Now I'm an adult, I'm like, people are like, what do you want for your birthday? Your company?
Netzel says yes. Artie Hearty Life says, my brother is Aquarius, Feb 14th. Oh, and Artie Hearty Life also says, you are right in the middle of Aquarius.
Am I? Right. Because
we deliberately don't do that double present thing for either Ethan or...
Yeah, we deliberately, for my nephew, don't do that double present thing.
We do two separate, or one big one.
Yeah, either 2 separate or one big one, twice the money. But my sisters are determined to have all their children, it seems, between November and February. Despite me saying, please, I can't afford it anymore. Goes, it don't work like that. I'm pretty sure you can count to 9 months. But anyway, that's my thing. Yeah, so I got bath melts and towels coming. But the other thing I'm really, really excited about, I've got a decent clay extruder coming. My hubby's got it for me.
JYB905 says, wow, so detailed.
Thank you. It really goes together quickly and it's really relaxing. I really advise you all to do this. I know I'm off the bottom.
I don't mean to change anything, I just mean that.
There we go. And if any of you do make up your own dragons, I love to see other people's work. And if you need any help, you can always message me. I'm generally around, usually afternoon, because I tend to be pretty ill in the mornings. But I'm always up for answering and helping people out. Because when before I got into clay, I had one of these art teachers that made me believe that I couldn't do anything artistic. I was a complete failure. And I was at drawing and painting. I agree. But that's not the only art form out there. And there's so many crafts that there is something for everyone. And creativity is an important part of our mental health. So when I come across people who say, I can't do anything, to me that's a really big challenge. I love to help change that narrative in their heads. And it makes a difference. When I was 20, I had a really, really big career in the civil service. I was a human rights and devolution policy advisor for them. Massive social life, all that sort of stuff, but I didn't really actually do much that I enjoyed. I thought I put off all the holidays, I'd got all the time in the world to do all the things I want to do, and I woke up one day paralysed and was bedridden for many, many years, and I've come back kind of from it, but I still got very bad chronic fatigue syndrome, which stops me doing an awful lot of things. So I argue, don't put off your fun things. Even if it's 5 minutes a month. It's important. Do stuff for you. Work your time and get it so that you can do stuff that's fun and creative and enjoyable. Because it's your good memories that get you through your bad times. Money's nice, but if you've got no good memories, when you're stuck in bed for ages, it's not easy. And that wasn't me. I did have a lot of good memories, but I realised the importance of it. And actually, it turns out the whole health problem stuff, I'm really lucky. First off, I didn't have any of the really bad stuff. I'm not dying from this. And it got me into claying. I would not have picked up clay. It was just wouldn't have been something I had time for. I only picked up clay because I was bedridden and my muscles became very atrophied. My physio said they wanted me to try and build myself back up because I couldn't even hold a pen. And it was something you can do from your bed.
You're stronger than me now.
And it really is something you can do from your bed, polymer clay, and not get it everywhere.
Well, on a tray.
Normal clay, you got to have a tray. I used to use a big dinner tray, and that I'd work for hours, and you don't notice that you're doing your body's not feeling great because you're so focused on what you're doing that hours go. It's really awesome as a recoup. So if any of you have got any major health problems or something coming up that you're going to really need to rehab yourself from, get yourself stuff to do from bed, and claying is a good one. I mean, if it's surgery, you're going to need to do the 6 weeks of not doing anything strenuous. But after that, get your family to buy you a pack of Fimo Soft and set yourself to make something simple. And I actually found dragons were something that really helped me recoup, because you're not trying to make something that is out there and live in, that you got photos of, that if you don't get it exactly right, there is a right and wrong for it. Dragons, any colour, there's a multitude of designs and styles, and they're all right. So you can really let yourself go and become very creative. And doing these scales when you're really feeling rough and your brain's really foggy, you haven't got to count stitches or measure anything or really put any real thought into it, so you can almost go into an automatic pilot with them. And on some of my worst patches, I made some of my biggest dragons through those periods, because they really were my therapy, and I really recommend them. It's a really positive way of recouping. Right, I say I'm halfway up, so I can show you what I'm doing on the back legs. Got glitter on them already. Right, let's get 2 back legs. Glitter and cat hair. The whole combined pile of everything. Right. Now, remember, you want your scales to go in the same direction. So, we're going to put the leg, it's going there. So the scales have got to face that way. Now, so we can't start up on the toes, because you've got to overlap the round bit onto the pointy bit, or it looks really weird. You have to start up at the very top bit of the thigh. Now, if you were going head to toe, so you were doing them that way round, then you would have to start on the toes and go round to the top. Does that make sense?
Fairy Hedgehog says nothing is complete without cat hair.
I know, right? I think that cat has more hair off its body than it does on its body at any given moment.
Even with it.
And if the ratio ain't right, I'm sure it's got a little postal service that it can ship in cat hair. Yes, hello Ruru. He's Rufus. We've got another one called Bonnie, but we have to keep them separate because Rufus likes to try and beat her up, and she don't need that. Luckily, I've got a big enough house that I live in that allows me to be able to do that with our cats. Whoop, there we go. Right. So, like I said, we are going from the base here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little fan round to the centre like this. So I'm going all the way around.
Litzel says, you're very inspiring. Thank you for sharing.
Oh, no worries. I've had people say that to me before, and I don't feel like I'm inspiring. I just know human beings can cope with a lot, and we can cope with way more than we thought we can. It's pretty amazing, because no one actually tells us how not to. I mean, you can have a nervous breakdown. These things are possible, but you can't decide to have one. You can't decide to give up. It either happens and you break, or you just keep waking up the next day, and either you find something to do with it, or you're going to be really bored. Boredom is an amazing way of bringing you through. And I'm not saying I weren't bitter. I was pretty much a nasty person for the first year of my illness. And I believed everyone didn't believe me and all that sort of stuff. But there's only so long you can stay in that mindset. It's actively difficult to remain in that pit. And yeah, even the weakest person, if you woke up tomorrow with something, you would have to find a way to get on with that day.
You would.
Because it doesn't go away just because you don't like it. Right, can you see I made that sort of almost looking like fingers together, that sort of look. And then you can start to build out round it. And you're going in little circles. Okay? And this is what you're going to do on your legs, on all four of them. Is start to come round like that. And that's how I've worked out is the most natural looking way to fill it in. And when you get down to that joint, you really can almost just jump over it. So I'll show you what I mean. These scales run out too quickly.
Hedgehog says, do you have to cover all the way round?
It depends. It's a dealer's choice. You can on the underside do underside belly scales. You can the bit that if you've pre-planned how you're going to stick it to the body, you can leave the patch that you're going to join with on, but by leaving a bald patch, you have committed to that being the join place. If you cover the whole leg, then you can angle it forward, you can angle it sideways, you can have it climbing up and bring it up there, and it all looks right. And I find when I'm putting together a statue, I'm better off having all the components and then try and make a position. So I won't add the legs until I work out how I'm going to stand her and how I'm going to wrap him around her. Because what I need is I'm going to have her stood. I'm going to make a plinth for a crystal ball. So I've got this that I got from a charity shop, a really cool crystal ball. So I ordered in some Fimo marble, which looks like this and is awesome. It's basically like a grey Fimo that they've added quite a chunky black glitter to. So even when you condition this, you need it. Conditioning is when you need it out to mix the plasticizer in. It still keeps that look. So picture this. We're going to have a base, her stood there with the crystal ball like that and her hand over it. This hand is going to get wedged in, that wire is going to get wedged into the head to help hold her up. And then I'm going to bring the hand up from the wrist over onto the dragon's head So we've got dragon head there, probably looking at her and the crystal ball, and then the body needs to wind its way around. Yeah? She's the second in the sculpture range. So my first dragon witch was this one. I got a set of crystals from a charity shop, so I thought I would do my own version of Myth and Magic. So can you see the nose, the hand rests on the nose, but the wire goes right in. Thank you. So the wire is actually not at the same angle as the hand. So that's what we're looking at. So the reason why I put in all the scales is because then you know you won't end up with patches. It all looks like it should. Right, I was cutting scales, wasn't I? Jumping around here. Now, I generally hate making humans. They're the hardest things to make out of everything I do clay-wise, because there's a lot of components and you have got to be accurate on them all, or it's vastly noticeable. The human brain is very programmed to have the ability to spot minor imperfections in humans, and it's not us being sort of racist or disablest or whatever. It's human instinct. We are animals, and it is one of our instinctive behaviours. And just because you don't notice it with your higher conscious mind, your subconscious will pick up on things like that. So that's the other thing to say. You know how I said there was glitter running through the cane? It didn't show so much on the outside, but when you got the slices, when I wiggle it, can you see, oop, focusing in, there is actually a fair old bit of glitter in the dark red. And I did that because I know I'm doing glitter on the stomach, so A, it ties it in, and B, if I get some of the tummy glitter on one of the scales, it will blend in a bit and I ain't got to clean it all down. Little hacks. The little hacks that let you get away with things. So where's that leg I was working on? Here we go. Right, I was going to show you how to get into that corner with the scales. What I'm doing is I'm going to bring it down as close to that joint as I can, and I'll probably get my rubber tool or a ball tool and just get it down into that gap like that. I'll put in the next row because it's looking a bit odd. Whoop, there we go, just round to here. I'm just doing the most important points so you're not sitting here for hours watching me scale up the dragon, when it's very easy to, very intuitive, that's the word I'm looking for. Can you see I'm just tucking them in down the side like that, and then when I get to the calf I can then tuck them in on the other direction. So once I've done it, I'll show you what I mean. Tucking it right in like that. There we go. Right, last one in, and then I can show you what I mean. Can you see I've brought it, oops, there, brought it in along that side,
that leg looks remarkably human,
and then bring it in like that. What I figured is a dragon's gonna have very muscly legs and arms, so I've tried to make sure I keep all those in. it shall look a little less human when you have got all your scales going on. But there is so much design that you can actually decide to do something different with. There are a lot of dragons that have very skinny legs, and it actually looks really good on them. But I think what it is for me, where I do like reading about animals a lot, and my mythical creatures I try to design in a way that if they were to live in the real world, they'll actually be able to get by alright. So you don't see me making wyverns, the ones with just 2 legs and 2 wings, because to me they are going to have such difficulty getting around unless they fly everywhere, which that's a big ask on a dragon. Since I'm going to be its creator, I'll stick on a couple of more legs, and then I know it can get around fine. Kind of mad, but there we are. So can you see I'm just building into that gap, and it looks okay, especially if you make sure you get a tool and you tuck it right in so that you do still get the definitions.
No, just turn it sideways so that we can see.
So like that, and tuck it right in, tuck it in under there, so you still got the definition of the shape, but it looks, but you've covered it up and you've not had to get your scales all the way up there. The other alternative is that you can make it straight and then bend it afterwards once the scales are in place, but that's kind of harder. Now that should get you through doing the body and the legs on them all. Now for the head. My new favourite drink. Water, some lime juice and some fresh ginger. Awesome. It really is nice. Right. So, what I'm going to be doing with the head is we're going to start from the back like we did with the tops of the legs. We'll end up, now I tend to start down at the base there. Hang on, wrong way up. Like that. If in doubt, put your head in place and then make sure you're following your scales around, so that way. So I start down the bottom like that, bring a line round, and then I bring up and go over. That makes sense? Now you don't have to cover the whole head in scales, but if you do decide to leave some of it just a plain colour, you've got to match in the skin colour. And what I would do with that is, if I wanted to not scale it, I would just cover the form in a thin layer of, say, orange or red. And the other thing that you can do that looks pretty good on the face, if you didn't want to put in all the scales, is there is a tool, there's a set of dotting tools. There's mine. If you put clay dots into Amazon, eBay, Etsy, you can get these, and they punch out dots. Now you're not looking to punch out the actual dot. What you'd be looking to do is just to find ones of different sizes, and you go from large down to small towards the outside edge, and what you're going to do is just literally lightly press it in, and you can see there is a slight mark, so you can then just come across and do a few of those, and that can look really nice across the face, also across the tummy. Because what you can also do, if you didn't want to do whole circles, is when you've dotted out a line, you then go across the top, rub out the top part of those circles, and then so like that, and then come back in and do the next line of circles, and that puts in a very sort of scale design. See? That's also a different way of doing your scales, but it doesn't give you the texture that going in and putting in scale canes do. So I generally don't go through and do the dotting. Oops, just put my dot tools back because I don't want to lose them, because they only ever sell them as the big sets, not individual. So if you lose one, you've got to buy them all again. So what I tend to do, I'm going to focus the last of this bit of time on the head to show you how I deal with the face and the eyes, because you're pretty competent and all that. Then there will be the wings to do, and I reckon I need to do the wings and the scale, these horns and stuff next week. Because how long have we been going now? Over an hour?
We started 5 minutes, 6:15.
So yeah, a little over an hour. So what I'm going to probably do is glitter in that underside, so I don't need to scale it, but you can totally put scales in, and you just do it like you did the back of that leg by wrapping around at the back of the head. So yeah, lots of design options, and you can put in at the tops of the legs is usually nice. If you've got a picture cane like a spiral or a flower, you scale around, you stick a slice on and then you scale around it so it's got like a little small image on areas. I've seen some really effective dragons like that. If you go on to Google imagery and put in polymer clay dragons, there are a plethora of them in all sorts of looks. Having said that, I tend to not look at them. I've been shown them a few times, but my mind is such, if I look at a drawing someone's done or a photograph or something like that, my mind isn't tempted to copy. If I look at something that someone's done of what I'm trying to make in the same medium I'm trying to make it, my brain automatically wants to just do the same thing. And I find the more you do exactly the same thing as someone else, the harder it is to find your own style of doing it. And that was a problem for me. I wanted to figure out my own way on all of it. So though I teach tutorials, I don't actually follow many of them. But having said that, I really love helping people, and I really don't mind people using my ideas. And with that in mind, keep an eye out on my Etsy shop. I am going to start selling make your own packs. So it'll be the clay, photographed, full instruction listing, any armatures or wires that are needed, that'll all be in there. Even down to if it's got glitter involved, like the unicorn I'm making, there'll be a little pot of varnish for you. So, and I'm like everything, I don't price very high over the material costs. So I really don't make a lot of profit on anything. What's more important to me is that my work improves someone's life somehow. So and going in, I'm going all the way around. I'm just starting to slightly diagonal up towards the face. You off, cat?
No, he just wanted to jump off.
Just wanted to jump off. Can you see? I'm just starting to, on each scale, starting to bring it out so it's laying on its side. And again, that's a personal preference. You can go along in a straight up and down line down the muzzle. I tend to like to have that sort of shape to it. Now, I'm gonna only do half the head. What I really need to show is the eyes and how I get that beak looking right. So we're getting to an eye now. I'm just laying the clay around the eyeball because I'm gonna come in a minute and make a stylized eyelid. So let's do a few more slices and I'll show you what I mean. There's several ways you can do eyelids. You can completely leave the scales off around the eyes and come in with some clay of the right colour and just literally put a little band and an eyelid over the top. That's what I did with this dragon here. So if you can see the eyelid, I literally came in with some lighter silver and just put an eyelid over the top of the scales. But you can make an eyelid from scales, and that's what I'm going to show you. Right, I'm going to come in. Can you see I'm just underneath the start of that eyeball? I don't want to overlap it too much. So like this, that's a good second row. Now, I come in up the bridge of the nose, like this. So there'll be a second one in there. This is the problem when you start to try and go up the side and then work sideways afterwards. It's harder to tuck the rounded bits over the point if you're going to do it. If I put that one in, it'll be hard to tuck the next one on. If that makes sense. So up the side of the nose like that. There we go. Push that one in place there. Right. We're getting a nose in, so you can see what I mean. The eye's just poking out, yeah? And I've on purpose made sure that I didn't have that eyeball flush with the skull, because all of this cane I knew was going to add thickness. So you want it to look pretty bulging and staring when you push in your eyes. And if you saw last week when we made all of that body, and if you want to see it, I've got the previous YouTube video is all of this stuff being made. The eyes are cat's eye beads, and if you're using cat's eye, you've got to make sure that the reflective line are going in the same direction top to bottom on both eyes. If you put one in and it goes left to right, you're going to have a derpy dragon, which is also a look. You totally can go for derpy dragon if you want. Right, I'm going to do the under eyelid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scale and I'm going to flatten it so that the colours are going back in a thin line horizontally like that, and then I'm going to bring that up into a point on each side. Yeah, we got that. Then that needs to be a little bit thinner to fit properly. So that actually is probably going to be enough for 2 under eyes. So let's take that and put that to one side. But you're going to have to measure up. It depends on the size of the scale you've cut. Now, I'm going to start off in the middle and push that there, and then bring it round into a point once the scales around it are in place, like these are. So like that. See? So you still got the shading under the eye of the top scale, but you've got that curve in place. Then once we got some of these forehead scales in, I'm not going right the way down to the eye. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna do put the top eyelid in first, I think. Let's go like this. I'm gonna bring this and point it the roundy end, so it's more of a leaf shape. Yeah, and pull it so that it's the width of the eye, and then you're going to push the back part of that leaf above the eye, and that helps you curve in the top eyelid like that. Oops, sorry, there we go. Like that. And you can use your tools, get them underneath and shape your eyelid how you want it, so that it's either looking quizzical or startled or angry. The shape of your top eyelid will convey a lot. Yeah? So take some time to have a fiddle. You can pinch that tip and bring it up a bit if you want, so you've got more of a tick shape to the eye. See? So it's all stylized options going on there, but I find using a scale really does tie it all in quite nicely. And then you just come in and tuck the next scale above it like that, so you can carry on and bring in the next line. See? You've got your eye in then. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish that head, because I want to show you what I do for a nostril and mouth as well. Because you can just imply a mouth with the divide between the belly design and the back scales, or you can put a sausage in of a decently accenting colour. So let's bring this round, show you tip of the beak.
Sorry.
So what I'm going to do is that curved beak, I'm going to start to mould the scale by pinching it round that corner like that, so that it forms the same shape. So your beak tips are going to look, the scales for the beak tips are going to look a little bit odd, and that's fine. So this very tip bit here, I'm going to probably cover it just to be certain that I'm not going to have black showing through. So like this, and then oops, just having a fiddle, then I'll layer it up like that. I know it seems like a very difficult sculpture, and things like penguins would probably be an easier start off point, but I do actually, I am kind of glad that I did get started on dragons as one of my first evers, because you succeed a lot with them because there isn't any wrong. Right, can you see it? I've brought in a nice little tip to that nose now, and just by folding that colour over, I've hid a multitude of sins by having join lines that aren't actually joining very well. There we go, like that. So even when you're being as rough as this, and I'm patching bits in and I'm not doing it in order, it still turns out looking great because your eye don't go to individual scales, it goes for the overall effect. So it looks daunting, especially the finished dragon. Looking at it, when I first saw properly made dragons, I was like, I don't think I'll ever get there. And actually, I'd say they're easier than things like monkeys or especially things standing up like horses. That can be really tough just to get the legs to not buckle. So yeah, dragons are not, do attempt them. They're really fun. Right. I'm almost got that muzzle done now. So yeah, in an hour I've done half the body, most of the head, and a good portion of one leg. So it does actually come together really quick. So that's the head so far. Either you can leave it like this, glitter in the bottom, and that will make it look like there's a separate mouth, or you can come along with a completely different colour clay. So I would do something like an orange with this, roll it out into a thin stick the size you want your mouth, so probably not a lot of clay at all. Let's bring it out, and you want the tips to be pointed, so let's have a measure around like that, like that. All that can go. So I bring these tips into a nice point, then measure halfway, and that goes in the middle there, and you bring the smile up like that. Now that's too long, so I'm going to shrink that down and bring it into a point. There we go. Same the other side. Like that. And I'm just sculpting it around those bottom scales there. Like that. Now that looks kind of rough at the moment, but what you can do that looks really good is you divide that line in half, and then they end up looking like lips. So you can use your needle tool and just go through and draw a line through that stick you just put in, dividing it in half, and try not to smudge your scales when you do this. I know you can't see very well, I had to see what I was doing there. There we go. Can you see? You've now got lips in place, and that's a good way of defining out the mouth. Yeah, and again for nostrils, whoops, don't drop your bottle. What I do for nostrils is the same colour I used for the mouth. I take two tiny little balls that are the same size as each other. That looks about right. Two little balls, and you're gonna put your nose straight ahead like that, and face the tip of the nose towards you, and put the two little balls just as it starts to curve over next to each other, like so. And get your pin tool, and you're going to push that through the middle, and then suddenly you got really nice defined nostrils. Now if you try and make little donuts like that out of sticks of clay, you'll never get the join to look right. It's far easier to go for a ball and push a hole, and that works on a bigger level. If you wanted to make a donut, instead of a stick of clay and you're trying to bring it round and do that and join it in, which is difficult to get that join to look right, what I would do is form a ball like so, bit of a flat disc, push a hole in it, and then you're going to roll along the inside along your fingers, and that starts to bring that out. Push it flat, pull it out. Can you see? You can end up with a far easier controlled donut shape than if you tried to join edges. And you can do this with a knitting needle. Knitting needle works really well actually when you're making donut edge. You can bring it out as thin as you like, do it as neat as you like. This isn't really a good tool once you start getting to the bigger sizes. I tend to start to bring it onto the wood and the metal and do that. So you see, you can end up with a really good sized ring. It's not just in tiny. So that's my trick for the day, is to form a ring that way rather than trying to join the ends. It's also stronger. So yeah, only other thing that I would say, if you get any real big problems of one colour into another that you don't like, you're gonna need isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol that is 70% proof or higher. Any lower it won't work. And what you'll find, so like this, there is, let's put some red on it, and I didn't want red on it, so oops, big bit of red on my clay. Your rubbing alcohol dissolves the surface of the clay and will melt it off and strip it, and you can see it going, the stick's starting to go orange, the mark is vanishing, and there it goes. There you go. See? You can clean your clay down. It does not work for baked clay. I know the first time I tried to fix a problem with my polymer clay, I tried it on baked clay because no one told me otherwise. So always good to have some rubbing alcohol. I know people recommend nail varnish remover, but I've had some seriously mixed results with nail varnish remover. And it's more expensive than isopropyl alcohol. So I'm probably going to leave it here, and I'm going to finish this off over the next few days. Just the body, legs and head, get them covered. Then when we come back on Wednesday, I will show you what I'm going to do with the wings and the head horns and the little spike for the end of the towel. Okay? So, still a work in progress, and it's been lovely having you all here with me. I hope you have a really great week, and as I said, like and follow any of my stuff, watch my previous videos, and I'm always here if you've got any questions or want to show me anything. Alright, have a great week. Bye!